traitor. We soon ran into a mossy den. The entrance was small but just big enough for us to get in. We panted heavily, out of breath. What are we gonna tell the Alpha? Cairo said, having a worried face. If they learn that I was taking you on a tour around the whole forest without them knowing, they'll surely kick me out. Cairo, you should admit to what you've done. What? Are you crazy? Well, at some point you'll have to admit to what you've done anyway. Yeah, sure, whatever. Cairo thought for a moment. He had an idea. Know what we can do? What? We can just bend the truth a little bit, half truth half lie. What do you plan to say? I was taking you hunting with me. Muffin wanted to come along to watch you do your first hunt. But we got a tiny bit lost and accidentally wander into the path of 3 coy dogs. You mean 4 coy dogs? Yeah, 4 coy dogs. We were about to fight, when suddenly Deathwolf came out of nowhere. We ran as fast as we could, but Muffin ended up getting eaten. Cairo, are you sure that they'll believe that? Of course they would. It's the most realistic lie ever that had truth sprinkled in. Now come on, Seth, we got an Alpha to talk to. Cairo climbed out of the den, Seth following. After what seemed like an hour or two, they made it back to pack grounds. Seth had his head down, ears pinned and his tail low but not tucked. They both walked into the Alpha's den. Damon was in the leaf bed in the corner, facing away from them. They both stayed quiet. Hello, Cairo and Seth. Damon said before turning around and staring at them. Cairo gulped before speaking. Sir, I have some awful news. Go on, Damon said, getting up and walking over to them. Me and Seth were going hunting. Muffin wanted to see Cairo hunt, but we got a bit lost somehow and we ran into 4 coy dogs and... Cairo paused. He was extremely nervous, and then Deathwolf came out of nowhere and killed Muffin. Damon paused and long silence struck. Damon walked out the den. Do you think I upset him? Cairo turned and looked at Seth. Seth shrugged. Soon they heard a howl coming outside. They both padded outside. Dogs gathered. Damon was standing on a rock. There was a split silence before Damon started howling. It was loud and could be heard from miles. Soon all the dogs around us started howling with Damon. What's happening? Seth said, looking at Cairo. We're passing a message to all the pack grounds. It's a thing we do to get important messages and news around. Cairo started howling, Seth too. They passed the message of Muffin's death, so now every single dog in Douglas Pack knew their beta has died. The dogs were all sad, some worried who would be the new beta. Cairo stared at the ground. You okay, Cairo? Soon the clouds darkened and rain fell upon us. Cairo lifted his head and looked at Seth. This is all my fault, Seth, if I listened to her warnings or just didn't even go because she was on the tour now. Then just maybe she could have lived. Her death wasn't your fault. You didn't know about those coy dogs. Yeah, but if I did, you didn't, and you can't change that. Now let's go get out of this rain. Seth and Cairo padded into the cave and lied down next to each other. We watched the rain pour down. Hello, we heard a deep voice coming from behind us. We quickly looked behind us. We saw a German Shepherd pit mix, though looked mostly like a German Shepherd but had short fur like a pit bull and a pit bull's face. One of his eyes were green and the other was brown. Who are you? Seth said. Oh, that dog arrived a month ago. His name is Cairo. Was cut off by the Shepherd mix. Shut up, I'm doing the introduction, not you. The Shepherd mix snarled. Anyway, the name Titus, but my nickname is Boomer. You? Seth, no nickname. Seth stood up and turned around. Cool, see ya around, Seth. Titus trotted off. I have a bad feeling about that guy. Seth stared at Titus until he was out of view. Yet, he gives me a bad feeling too, but nothing you can do. Seth lied down next to Cairo on his side. They both listened and watched. They almost fell asleep together. Though Cleo trotted over with Cosmo, the Great Dane, to us and stopped us from falling asleep. Hey guys! What ya doing? Cleo said, wagging his tail. Nothing much. We have nothing to do. Cairo said. Have you heard that the beta has fallen? Death Dog 8M. Cosmo said. Yeah, I happen to be the one who delivered the news. Cairo looked down for a moment then back at them. Did you get the vet products to the other pack ground safely, Cleo? Seth said. Yeah, kinda a shame I didn't get to go on that tour with you, but that's probably for the best. I could have been the one to be eaten. Cairo nodded. Anyway, it's getting late, I should probably get to bed. I have a busy day tomorrow. Good night, guys. Cosmo trotted off and into bed. Same for me, night guys. Cleo ran to his bed. Hey Cairo, I'm pretty tired so I'm going to bed. Alrighty, I gonna get some food and water before going to bed. Alright, good night Cairo. Night Seth. Seth and Cairo turned and went in opposite directions, Cairo leaving the cave and running to the forest. Seth trotted along the stone, going to his bed and sleeping. Seth woke up, he stayed in bed for a minute before getting up and trotting outside. I looked around though none of my friends were there, so I decided to go get some breakfast. I jumped through a bush and ran through the forest. I spotted a deer standing near the shore of the lake but standing on a rock. The whole lake had rocks surfacing the top. I got down and slowly crept towards the deer, staying as quiet as possible. But then out of nowhere a husky jumped down a hill and sped along the rocks, not touching the water at all. Soon the deer noticed and started running, though had trouble running across the shallow lake since the deer wasn't as skilled as the husky was. Seth watched the husky before trying to run across the lake himself, though found himself having as much trouble as the deer. Having to climb over the rocks and some deeper spots in the water catching him by surprise. The husky jumped onto the deer's back when she was close enough and bit down the deer's neck and pushed herself forward, putting weight on the deer's side. The deer fell over, flipping on its side and rolling and crushing the husky. The husky's head was pushed underwater. When her head was out of the water she let go and let the deer keep rolling till it stopped. When the deer finally stopped rolling it had scraps and bruises on it. The husky ran towards the deer and bit its neck, closing the windpipe and suffocating it till it died. Soon Seth managed to catch up with the husky. Hey! How did you learn to do that? Seth said, climbing onto a rock. Years of practice. Seth nodded and looked at the deer. Mind if I have some deer? You happen to be hunting the same exact deer I was hunting and... Seth was cut off by the husky. Go ahead. Seth nodded and ate some of the deer. What's your name? The husky asked. Seth, you. Evergreen. Hey Seth, are you new here? Because I don't recall ever seeing you in the territory. Oh, I arrived about 3 or 4 days ago. Oh, cool. What pack ground you live in? No clue what it's called, but in the same pack ground where the Alpha Den is. Nice. I'm in Camp B, you're in Camp A. How many camps are there? 4 in total, others are C and D. Bingo, not very unique names yet, I know. And you should probably eat that deer before it gets too soggy. Oh, right. I should go now, bye Evergreen. See ya Seth. Seth ran off, Evergreen eating the deer but soon start pulling it out of the water. While running back to pack ground Seth bumped into Titus who just jumped out of the bush in front of him. Oh, I'm so sorry Titus. Oh, it's fine. Isn't my first time being bumped into. Oh. Well, I better get going. I walked past Titus but then stopped and looked behind me and watched him run off. Something is terribly wrong about that dog. I turned to the direction Titus ran. I'm going to follow them. Seth sniffed the ground and looked at the paw prints. He tracked Titus. Seth saw Titus and jumped into a bush and watched him. Titus looked around and sniffed a small bit before walking into a den. Seth slowly stepped out of the bush and peeked inside the den. Titus was just lying down. Maybe I was wrong about him. Seth whispered and turned around. He continued on his way to pack grounds. When Seth arrived he talked to his friends Cairo and Cleo, and hang out around camp. About an hour passed, they were all circled lying down under the shade of a tree. Suddenly Titus stepped into camp with an injured King Charles Spaniel. It had a major bite wound to the neck. Titus caught all the dogs' attention. Seth stood up and ran over to Titus. Titus carefully put down the small dog. "What happened?" Damon said, walking over. "Dog stepping out of the Alpha's path." "Well, this poor dog was lost and I was showing its way back to camp, but then a black dog came out of nowhere and tried to snatch this dog to kill it. But luckily I was able to attack it before the dog could snatch it away. Though the dog managed to get a good bite at the neck." "Do you know what does this dog look like, Titus?" "Oh, well, I didn't get a good look at it. I was so focused on saving this dog I didn't think to try to get the details to get this cruel and evil dog in trouble, but I do believe that this dog was a black dog. But what I do know is we got a traitor among us. I say we should be careful of black dogs in this whole pack." The dogs looked at each other, some dogs giving black dogs a bad look. "Come on, you have to at least know the body shape if you were attacked," Seth said. Soon Delilah came over to the small dog. "What took you so long, Delilah?" Cleo said, "Well, it isn't that easy to crawl through thousands of dogs' legs that keep moving around." Delilah examined the dog's bite wound. "I can tell it's surely a dog bite, but this dog needs to get to the medicine den." "I'll take them," a bloodhound said, picking up the dog and bringing it to the medicine den. Delilah would go to the medicine den too. Darius walked over to Damon. "Shouldn't we tell all the other pack grounds?" Damon nodded and trotted over to Rock. He climbed on top of it and started howling. All the dogs started howling. Seth stared at all of the dogs howling. He sighed and started howling too. Soon we stopped howling. It was getting late, so the dogs went into the cave and slept. Seth was just lying down in his bed and watching everyone sleep. "Ugh, I can't sleep." Cleo lifted his head up and looked at Seth. Seth noticed Cleo. "Cleo? How did I not notice you slept next to me?" "No clue." "Cleo, do you think everybody gonna think I did it?" "No way, plus it's impossible for you to do it. You're new and don't even know how to fight." "Hey. Well, I guess you're right. Now, we can talk about this more tomorrow." Cleo laid his head back onto the soft leaves. Seth stared at Cleo before laying his head down too and sleeping. Seth woke up. Most of the dogs were awake. "I walked out of the cave. I had some looks from the crowd, but most of the dogs didn't seem to notice me, which made me better." Cleo walked over to Seth. "Morning, Seth." "Morning, Cleo. How are you feeling?" "Good." Cleo smiled and nodded. "Wanna go hunting with me?" "Sure." "Lead the way, Seth." Seth nodded. We jumped through the forest and headed to the Great Valley. We spotted a herd of deers grazing. We got down and snuck through the tall grass and stopped when the grass got lower. "Need a third dog?" Evergreen said, scaring Seth and Cleo. "Jesus, Evergreen, you came out of nowhere," Cleo said. "Yeah." Seth agreed. "Well, sorry." Cleo huffed. "You can join the hunt," Seth said. Evergreen smiled and looked towards the deer herd. "Evergreen, Seth. On the count of 3 we get that deer." Cleo pointed towards a young adult stag. Seth and Evergreen nodded. 3, 2, 1. We all jumped out of the tall grass and sprinted towards the deer, some dirt flying behind us. The herd noticed us and started running. When we were close enough to the deer, we stared to close the deer in, Cleo on the right, Seth on the right, and Evergreen in the back gaining on the deer. Evergreen tried to bite the deer's leg, though the deer nearly kicked her. She stopped and jumped back midway through the deer's kick. Cleo took the kick as a chance to bite the deer. Cleo bit the deer's thigh and slowed it down a lot. Seth bit the deer's lower side and didn't let go. The deer called and snorted for help, though the herd was long gone. Evergreen grabbed the leg and tried to pull the deer down. The deer soon gave up and willingly fell over to die. Seth bit the deer's neck. Evergreen and Cleo joined in and bit the deer's neck too. They soon killed the deer. They all ate the deer. Happy with their kill, they ate the deer till there was only a few chunks of meat left. Should we leave off some meat at the Alpha's den? Evergreen said. Yeah, a gift. You can drop it off at the Alpha's den, Seth. Seth nodded and ripped a piece of meat off the remaining chunk of meat. Seth and Cleo returned back to our pack grounds. Seth dropped the meat off at the Alpha's den. Well, what now? Seth thought. Hey Cleo, does this forest has a waterfall? Yes, actually. Do you know the way? Yeah, follow me. Cleo ran out the camp and through the forest. We were running for about 35 minutes, taking a few minute breaks. We went over to a lake. Here's the waterfall. Cleo pointed at the waterfall. Great, now let's climb up there. Seth walked over to where the mountain was climbable. Wait, what? Come on, trust me. Me and my owners used to do this all the time. Yeah, and now they're dead. Seth started climbing, Cleo running over. Yeah, and now they're dead. Cleo put his paws on a rock. That's not how they died. Cleo slowly stepped onto the rock. What if we fall and die? It's impossible to fall and die, we're just walking up a steep rocky hill-like mountain. If we fall we just roll. There's rocks, we can get seriously injured. Ugh, just come on. Seth soon reached the top of the cliff. They were right next to a river. Seth looked behind him. Cleo was nearly on the top. Seth looked towards the river and saw Titus, grabbed a collar out of the water. The collar's tag has the name Seth on it. It was his collar he must have lost during the car crash. Before Seth could talk to Titus he sprinted off. Hey! Seth yelled. What's wrong? Cleo said, climbing up. I saw Titus. Really? Yes, and he had my collar. Where was he? On the other side of the river. Sorry, Seth, but there's no way we're able to cross that. The current will take us off the cliff and all the way down. Now why are we up here? To jump down into the lake. There's no way I'm doing that. Come on. We're just jumping onto the water. Me and my owner used to do it all the time for fun. I guess I could try. Alright, see you on the way down, Cleo. Seth backed up and ran towards the cliff. He jumped off it and Cleo watched. Seth landed in the water, making a large splash, and looked up at Cleo. See? I'm not dead. Seth yelled. Cleo thought twice before jumping. He backed up and jumped off the cliff. He landed into the water. The splash spraying Seth with water. Cleo swam to the surface. I guess that was okay. The first minutes were horrible. It like your heart just drops. That's what it's like the first 10 times, if you do it more you get a more better and funner experience. Well, that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing for me. Cleo swam towards Seth did too. Alright, shall we go home? How about we get some food on the way back? Alright. Seth and Cleo hunted and went back home. It was night when they returned. Night already, hey? Cleo looked up at the stars. Spent more time hunting than we thought. Whatever, I'm tired. Night, Seth. Cleo trotted into the cave to sleep. Seth walked into the cave too. Halfway in the cave he noticed Titus was the only dog that wasn't sleeping, though didn't think much of it and continued walking. Soon he reached his bed. He curled up and went to sleep. He slept for about an hour and woke up. He tried to go back to sleep but couldn't due to his thirst. At least I know where the closest water source is. That place I saw the den Titus was in. Seth was still a bit tired and not fully awake, so he didn't think about what he just said and got out of bed and trotted out of pack ground. He soon jumped down the ledge and went over to the pond and drank some water. Soon he heard the snap of a stick behind. He turned around. He saw nothing but darkness behind him at first, but then he saw glowing eyes. One eye was green and the other brown. I've been waiting for you, Seth. The dog stepped a bit out of the shadows to show his muzzle. He was holding a knife. And I have a new knife to try out on your skin. End of chapter 2.